There appears to be a growing movement away from diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what is it about DEI that people are taking exception to? The D, the E, or the I? Or is it all three? In this episode, we'll examine this doctrine in light of America's founding principles. We'll also run down our POC top 3 and present another nugget of next to nothing that we call news you can't use. That's all coming up right now on the Physics of Civics. Well, Jay, politicians are always seeking to win debates, persuade people on issues, and when possible, delegitimize their opponents. And part of this involves what some refer to as controlling the narrative. In other words, telling the story they want voters to hear. Now, narratives, of course, employ the use of language, which means political success can often hinge on winning word games. And I think it's important for voters to be attuned to this and to recognize when words are being manipulated. For example, in our episode on gender, you and I talk about how one side conflates the words sex and gender as if those words meant the same thing. Spoiler, they don't.
Nope.
Now make sure you subscribe to get all our content and our recent episode on gender. Another example involves the words equity and equality. Now these two words have similar spellings and pronunciations, and one might be tempted to think that they mean the same thing or something similar. Again, they don't. Equality, as a term of public policy, means something quite specific. And that meaning is a cornerstone of what America is all about. Write a comment. Tell us what you think.
Welcome to the Physics of Civics, where free speech is still free. Like, follow, share, and subscribe for valuable insights. This episode of the Physics of Civics is brought to you by Savage Soaps. Shop SavageSoaps.com for luxurious, all-natural soaps and other skin-loving products for men and women. All made right here in America from sustainably sourced plant-based ingredients. Get wet with Savage. Equality is really the very foundation of what our nation was built on. You need to look no further than the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, right? Equal, that's the key word. Unfortunately, our founders didn't really mean all when they wrote that.
No, they did not.
Because to them, equality meant rejecting class distinctions based on heredity and sex and so forth. But in fairness, it was a sign of the times in which they lived. So, you have to give some leeway to the fact that it was 1776, right?
Yeah, you can't judge those people in those times by today's standards. It's not fair.
And over time, we've worked to make that promise of equality mean something more broad. After the Civil War, during Reconstruction, we had the 14th Amendment, which ensured equal rights for freed slaves. And then in 1920, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote, making it clear that states could not block anyone from voting because of their sex. In many occasions, really, the federal government has stepped up and passed laws. Probably the greatest example that people will be familiar with, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was written to protect everyone's rights.
It really was.
At the time, though, it was really geared towards African-American citizens who really weren't being treated fairly. So, yeah, America's been grinding away to live up to the ideal of equality, I think.
Right.
What does equality really mean? It's about equal rights, equal opportunity, and equal justice under the law for all, for everybody.
Right.
Equality is about giving everyone a fair shot at the starting line. It's not about guaranteeing where you'll finish.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's not about the results. It's about, you make the right analogy here. It's the race. We all start at the same place at the same time at a race, and whoever finishes first. Right. Based on
meritocracy, right?
Merit, exactly.
Yeah.
The other word, the similar word, but not the same word, is equity. What is equity? Well, there are a number of meanings for equity. There's home equity. That's the difference between what your home is worth and what you owe on it. There's owner's equity. That's the value of the assets of a business that the owner can claim less the liabilities. That's not what we're talking about. In this context, we're talking about equity as the quality of being fair and just. Now, those are words we all understand, but what do you notice right away, Jay, about these words, fair and just?
Well, they're subjective terms. I mean, it's all in the interpretation.
Right. These are words that can mean different things to different people. So it's basically based on opinion and perception, fair and just. Well, depending on your worldview and how you define these words, fairness and justice can be achieved in many different ways. In America, traditionally, we promote equality as a means to achieve fairness and justice. But equality does not necessarily equal equity, nor vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's nothing fair or equitable about DEI. It's quite the opposite, don't you think?
Exactly.
True diversity requires demographic representation, but also a culture that welcomes varied thoughts and challenges. And we don't see that in DEI. It's the opposite.
I think you're exactly right. And I think that's an important distinction because the way equity has been kind of snuck in to the conversation,
right,
into the narrative, where equality has traditionally belonged, in certain political doctrines and policy positions.
They substitute the word equity for equal.
Yeah. And frankly, a lot of people don't notice. At first, I didn't notice.
Right. Same.
I mean, as if they're the same or similar or equally desirable. And, people just have kind of accepted equity without realizing what it truly means politically. It does not mean equality.
Right.
Quite the opposite. Equity is the statist view of justice. Now, a statist is anyone who elevates government to the preeminent position in society.
Right.
Taken to its extreme, statism really becomes totalitarianism, wherein all social activities and interactions are basically a function of government, of the state.
Think North Korea.
Right. To the statist, equity is a form of justice by the numbers. Equity is a doctrine based on the idea that whenever benefits and resources are numerically disproportionate, that, distributed unevenly, that in itself is evidence of discrimination. Okay, so a business, for example, where the racial content of the workforce is not commensurate with that of the local population, is necessarily guilty of racial discrimination. And according to DEI, for the sake of justice, these numerical imbalances have to be rectified. Now, this, of course, is nonsense, and the Supreme Court has ruled as
You don't
much.
see them stepping in on the NBA or NFL, or,
Charlie Kirk used to make this analogy all the time. Would you want the NBA to force or, forcibly make all racial representation equal in the NBA? No, the product would suck.
Well, it already kind of does, but yeah.
Well, some people love it. Equity, as that term is currently used, goes beyond just rebalancing the scales. Real social justice, according to the DEI advocates, requires that government dismantle the societal structures that perpetuate the so-called privilege of the minority. And of course, this always starts with re-education. And that's a rabbit hole we could go down into for
or indoctrination.
A while, but I think we don't need to. Even further, equity demands that past injustices be atoned for by granting favoritism to those deemed to have been wronged by the system. In other words, if you don't check at least one box on the victim identity list, you go to the back of the line.
I check no boxes, bro.
Exactly. Qualifications notwithstanding.
Oh, it doesn't matter how good you are.
And that's why some say that DEI stands for didn't earn it.
Yeah, let's talk about the E in DEI equity.
Really, the E is the culprit.
The E is the culprit. I think we've determined that already.
Yes.
Yeah. And equity in this context isn't just about giving everyone a fair shot, like equality under the law. It's often framed as ensuring equal outcomes across groups, which sounds noble, but it can lead down a very tricky path, don't you think? And it has.
Well, yes.
I mean,
when you really put the thought to it.
Yeah, the argument here is that to achieve those equal outcomes, you sometimes have to treat people unequally. You're prioritizing
right.
people prioritizing certain groups over others based on their identity, like whether it's race or gender or sexual or whatever, And this can mean policies like quotas, preferential hiring, or resource allocations that aim to balance the scales, but they almost always end up sidelining merit, or they do always end up really sidelining merit or individual differences, don't you think?
Yes, and they've all been rejected by the courts.
Every time.
Yeah.
And this approach to equity, it can stifle diversity too. I mean, at least diversity of thought.
Which is really the most important kind of diversity.
It is the most important. Diversity of thought is the most important. DEI shuts that down. If the goal is to hit a specific demographic target or enforce a particular vision of, fairness, it can pressure organizations to align with a narrow set of ideological goals.
It can.
Like, for example, DEI training programs, and I've had to go through some of those before.
So we're going down that rabbit hole?
Yes.
Okay, let's do this.
I mean, what happens then is the training programs emphasize certain narratives, maybe like in my case, it was systemic racism or white privilege,
Oy.
in ways that it discourages you from any kind of open debate. I'm afraid to say anything like, wait a second here, because then I might not get my certification.
You need to check your privilege and shut the hell up.
Right. And at its core, this version of equity can become a tool for enforcing ideological orthodoxy rather than really celebrating the true mix of ideas and backgrounds and perspectives, don't you think?
Absolutely.
It's less about letting everyone run the race and more about making sure everyone crosses the finish line at the same time.
We see this on college campuses. Why has Turning Point become such a huge force on college campuses? Because Turning Point is allowing students to do what the universities will not allow them to do.
Right.
Speak openly, share their thoughts, debate.
Can't have that.
Hello. Is this not what, universities were made for? Now, I like what Thomas Sowell said about this, and I'm a big fan of Thomas Sowell.
I like everything Thomas Sowell says. That guy's
pretty much everything.
A genius.
Attempting to engineer equal outcomes by unequal means not only fails to uplift the disadvantage, it also perpetuates group conflict and fans the flames of social discord. I think he's exactly right about that.
Oh, nailed it. Yeah.
And while we're on the subject, Jay, let's not forget that preferential treatment based on race or sex is a violation of federal law.
Yeah.
Specifically, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. You talked about that. You remember that one. That's the one that Martin Luther King fought for.
That's right.
And ultimately gave his life for.
That's right.
Probably one worth complying with or paying attention to. Okay, so let's not let anyone tell you that DEI is about civil rights. It is a violation of civil rights. And, I think the courts have weighed in on this in a big way. And
over and over.
Are sure to again.
Yeah.
Now, we covered this topic of civil rights more in depth in another episode. Be sure to subscribe and please give us your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say about this. All right, so we got some POC top 3.
We do indeed.
What do we have this time?
I like this topic.
What's the subject?
This week we are doing the best one-hit wonders. Of course, that's in music. So songs that an artist had one huge hit with and then disappeared.
and then never again.
There's a lot of them, but
Okay.
there's actually some
I'm
pretty
gonna
good
go first
songs.
this
Yeah,
time.
you go first. Let's hear it.
You went first last time. Number 3 is a song called How Bizarre. You remember that
Oh,
back
I
in
do.
1996?
I do.
It's just got
Catchy
a kind
as
of
hell.
a Mexican vibe to it, a little mariachi band thing happening.
Very cool.
He's kind of got this rap thing going, only a little Latino flavor to it, and I just love it. It's got a great groove to it. How Bizarre. Number 2, She Blinded Me with Science by
Great
Thomas
song.
Dolby.
That was huge.
Huge song, and I don't think he was ever heard from again after
No.
that. I mean, that's not exactly true. He was a producer.
Yes, I was going to say.
And did a lot of stuff, but that was the only song he had.
Only hit he had, yeah.
And, really defined kind of the techno pop genre.
Pop sound of the
or
80s,
one of the defining songs. I just love where he goes, "Good heavens, Miss Yakamoto, you're beautiful."
Yeah.
And number 1 is Louie Louie by the Kingsmen.
Oh, huge.
Big song. A lot of controversy surrounding that.
Yeah,
Probably unearned, but great song.
What year was that, bro? That was
1963.
63.
It was written in 57 by somebody. It was made a hit by the Kingsmen in 1963. And there's a whole story about the legal problems with that. They thought it was obscene or some kind of crap. And they never did recover, and they never had another hit.
Yeah. All right, I'll give you my top 3. You ready for this?
Go.
My first one is politically incorrect, I would say, in today's times. This is 1976. Play That Funky Music. White Boy. Remember that?
White Boy.
By
Yes.
Wild Cherry. That was a humongous. I mean, wedding bands all over the world are still playing that song every gig.
Yeah.
Play that funky music, white boy.
Yeah. If my bandmates could hear you say that, they would laugh, because I have played up until a couple years ago. I think I played that song at every gig I've ever performed at since it was on the top 40.
Yeah.
And I had to make, I made a request. Can we just not do that?
Not do that. Yeah, I got about a dozen of those. My number 2 is a song that I actually thought was really clever, by Bobby McFerrin in 1988. Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Don't worry. Oh, I love it.
And all the instruments were his voice on that.
Yeah.
There's no.
That's his shtick. It was great.
Yeah, that was his shtick. And it was really clever. And, he made the rounds. He was on a lot of TV shows and stuff after that hit. But
that
never
was
had
pretty much
hit
it for him. Yeah.
My number 1 is a song that I've always loved, a band called Looking Glass.
Ah, yes.
Brandy, You're a Fine Girl.
The sailors say Brandy.
Yeah, such a great pop tune with these cool background vocals in 1972.
Yeah, a groovy little story that it tells,
Yeah, a cool little story and great arrangement. But hey, one hit and they were gone. So I guess that's our top 3. Leave us a comment and let me know what your favorite songs by one-hit wonders were.
And let me just say for the record that I do not disparage the one-hit wonder, because each one of them has exactly one more hit than I will ever have.
All right, Phil, you ready for some news you can't use?
Well, if I can't use it, then okay.
I got 2 stories I pulled up here, and one of them I read to Phil, and he said, no, skip that one. For a multitude of reasons.
For many reasons.
The story I came up with here is about a teacher's assistant in South Carolina who was arrested and charged with using poop spray in school, causing students to seek medical attention and resulting in thousands of dollars of damage. Now, have you ever heard of poop spray?
Oh, not only heard it, that's the
really?
Oh, it's vile.
It's really, I didn't know there was such a thing. I guess I'm out of touch here.
It's hydrogen sulfide or something. It's awful.
Alexander Paul Robertson Lewis. Guy has 4 names. Man, he must be important. 32 years old, was arrested Friday and charged with disturbing school and malicious injury to property. The guy apparently sprayed this poop spray in school as a joke. Some students started getting sick and had to seek medical attention for respiratory issues, authorities said.
Oh, brother.
And this is the killer right here, bro. It resulted in a hefty $55,000 bill to repair the school's air conditioning system,
my.
which he is responsible for. So, ouch.
Well, responsible financially for, or
Yeah. He's got to come up with the $55K. So anyway, well, sorry about that. Well, that's our news you can't use for the week.
Well, folks, that's our show. We're glad you joined us, and hope you got some clarity on some issues here. I'd like to think so, right, Jay?
Yeah, DEI is clear as a bell now.
We hope that you will like, follow, share, and hit that subscribe button. We want you to get every bit of wisdom and news you can't use and all the other stuff. We'll be back for another episode of The Physics of Civics.